All right, so we're about ready to get started with our talk here about creating voiceover for video games. I've got about a million windows open here, so I'm going to try to organize these guys for you. We'll give it about another minute here for people to show up. So if you're here, feel free to say hi in the chat right now. So I know you can hear me and everything's working, right? All right, cool. All right, yeah, what you're looking at here is I like this. I like this character art. It's actually from a game that my company worked on called Citizens of Space, and these are some of the. Actually, I played the archaeologist. I was the voice of the archaeologist there. But today, what we're going to do. Thanks for saying hi, by the way. So I know that you guys are there. What we're going to do today is talk about what it says on your screen, creating good voiceover for video games. And that's me, the CEO of Marvelous Spiral Studios. So what are we going to do? Well, let's take a look at what we're going to do today. So what makes good video game voiceover? I think a lot of people that make games or work in games really think it all comes down to the actor. But really, there's about 10 other things that you need to think about that really can affect the performance and the recording of the voiceover for your video game. Let's take a look at what they are. A director, acting, of course, the writing, right? You can only do the best you can with what you've been given. All right. The audio quality, of course, that regards to the equipment, the location, the sound, timely delivery, of course, right? You don't want to be dropping it into your game at the last minute before your planned release. Being efficient. So whoever you deal with, you want them to be efficient. You don't want them to be random in their time that they respond to you and difficult to deal with, right? And able to communicate. So all of these things have to do with how good your voiceover is going to be. All right. What else are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about when you're ready. Okay, so you've got your game and you're ready to get your voiceover. Really, that's when your script is done, right? You should get it done as soon as your script is finished, complete. You need to bring certain things to whoever's doing your voiceover. Okay, and so I'm going to give you basically a list of what those things are that you need when you're ready. Okay, and then you should get certain things back from whoever does your voiceover. Now, from my point of view, I'm going to be talking from hiring someone kind of like what we do as a studio, where we do professional delivery services of voiceover and other deliverables that you should get along with that. I'm going to talk about things you should not do. Common mistakes. If this is like your first time, right? So if you're an indie gamer and it's maybe your first time doing something like this, then hey Tim, it's good to see you. See you there, chat. But if it's your first time, I'm going to tell you things that you won't have to learn by trial and error. I'm going to help you prevent certain mistakes. How to do budgeting for it. Difference between union and non-union talent. Now, for indie games, most of them are non-union, but there could be exceptions, especially if there's a specific actor you want to use on their union. That forces the whole production to be union. And then we'll come to a conclusion at the end, which is what normally happens at the end, right? Okay, good. So who am I? All right, so I'm Stephen Weese, CEO of Marvelous Spiral Studios. You might know me from Shadowverse. I play the leader Dietrich there. In Blade and Soul, I'm Shundun. Of course, I'm in a lot of other things too, but I'm not going to mention them all right here. I do voice producing and directing as well. The first thing I did really was the Kickheart anime, which was actually the first kick-started anime. It's by Production IG. And I worked with Richard Epcar, who directed it, so I did the producing there on that one. And also Masaki Yuasa-san, who created it in Japan. He actually came over to LA to the studio we were working in and was there when we did the recording. Games that I produced for and directed, Sega's Citizens of Space, and Aaron's Adventure, which is going to be coming out real soon on April 7th. So we'll talk about that in a minute. All right. So if you have bad voiceover in your game, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have bad actors in your game, right? So there could be a lot of other reasons why things went bad. One of the reasons is bad writing. Another reason is bad casting, right? The person just doesn't belong in the role that they've been given, and it's probably not their fault. It's whoever cast them, right? Of course, the director is responsible. Now, a lot of people who are doing indie games are going to just reach out there and grab actors and say, here's some lines and do them without any direction. I don't recommend that. You really should have somebody at least there that knows the whole image, the scope of what you're trying to do, so that you can have that consistency that a director is going to bring. They bring a lot of things to the table, which we'll talk more about in a minute. Of course, bad recording in terms of the quality of many ways. Some actors don't know some things if they're amateurs. They could be improper distance from the microphone. That's enough to really mess things up, right? So you want to be careful there. Also, everything can be great, and then your post-production isn't very good, right? And so that's going to mess up your VO as well. So what you want to do to start with is have a professional level script, okay? Well, what am I talking about? Even if you are a really good writer, even a pro writer, you need someone else to look at your script and edit it, right? You need what we call in the movie industry fresh eyes, right? You need someone else to look at the script and see things like your themes, your characters, and other things just like your grammar and spelling, right? I've never gotten a script, whatever one I've done for animation or video games or anything else I've worked on, that hasn't had a few mistakes in it. And that's okay, because if I'm directing, I happen to also be a professional writer, so I can fix that and I notice those type of things. But you need someone else to look at your script or even help write it, right? If you're the game dev, or you're on a team of devs and you're mostly all developers, you really should go outside of your group and get someone else to do some writing for you, or at least do editing, right? At least bring you an edit for it. You can hire a pro to do what we call a polish, but that polish doesn't happen until you get really kind of far through the process, right? You need to have a almost finalized script before you get the polish done, because they're going to notice a whole bunch of the other simpler mistakes too, and it gets in the way of having that polish. But the actors can only use what they're given. Now, a big thing that I learned years ago, I knew this guy, well, I don't want to name drop, but a friend of mine knew a guy that wrote animation for Marvel. He wrote animation scripts for Marvel, and I'd written one of my very first screenplays, a movie. And I submitted to him, and the big thing he said to me is, all your characters, they talk like the same person. Your dialogue, there's no personality differences in the dialogue. It sounds like the same type of sentences. And I realized that's sort of one of my writing weaknesses, is I don't make the characters talk differently. And when you think about it, when you think about characters talking differently, you think about stuff like, oh yeah, they use different words, but their voice sounds different. That's usually what you think. Well, it doesn't matter if the words sound the same, because they're going to talk differently with their voice. But to add another layer of differentiation, there really should be in the way you write. Like, one character for an animation script I wrote recently is very hyper. So he speaks in short sentences, or not even just clips of sentences that are cut off, right? Oh, gotta go, taking there, gotta run, whatever, right? So something like that. And you can put that into the script. One of the things they do with animation, as you can see, is this silhouette, right? Where the idea is you should be able to recognize each character without seeing their face or their clothes or their colors. Their silhouette has to be unique. And in dialogue, their silhouette is a unique way of writing it. Yeah, certainly it's challenging to do, because even as a regular, like a screenwriter like I am, I realize that dialogue is sort of its own special thing, right? And so I actually, when I write things, I have a dialogue person to go over my dialogue and help me make it more crisp for each character, and really bring out those differences in terms of like lengths of the sentences, what types of word they use, what type of phrasing they use, all kinds of stuff like that. But if your script is good, it's so much easier to read when you're an actor. Now, having a director, what is this going to do for you? All right, like I said, there's going to be there's a temptation to be like, okay, we've got a script and we've got our game done. Let's just go out on the internet and hire random voice actors and send them the script and just have them do it. But you won't get any of this stuff. Okay, one of the things that directors do is keep actors on task, because when you're acting, right, as a voice actor, I know this, you're doing about 5 things at once, right? You're keeping your technical distance from the microphone, and you're making sure you're not bumping anything, you're making sure you're not doing anything that's going to mess up the sound. And you're also thinking about what's the character, what's the current emotion, so there's like 2 other layers there, right? And then you're thinking about delivering the line and saying the words. And sometimes there's even time constraints, right? For instance, I'm my character in Blade and Soul. The NCSoft released the game. It's a Korean game, but then they dub it into English for the rest of the international community to play it in English. And the only restriction I have, I don't need to match mouth movements, but I need to match the timing of the Korean. So I have a time length of how long I have to say things. So then I have to worry about how fast I need to say things too. So there's all these things that as an actor I'm doing, and I need a director to supervise me to make sure I get what they want. The director is going to listen to the delivery, and the director doesn't have to worry about all the things the actor's focusing on. They just hear the delivery. Is that the emotion? Does it convey the feeling that I want, right? Or if, like, I'm hired, right, by, for instance, like I mentioned, Aaron's Adventure, if I'm doing a game like that, I know the feeling, the mood, the idea, the characters. I've personally read the whole script, right? So that's my job as a director, to read the whole script and read the background and know the story, so I know what's going on. So if the actors have questions, then I can say, yes, this is what's happening in this scene, and I break down the whole scene for them. Or I explain, oh yeah, your character's immortal. So even though you're 20 sounding like you're 20s, but you really have lived 1,000 years, so you talk like you have more experience. Those kind of things are things that a director is going to do for you and keep your actors on task. But the big thing is preventing something we call drift. So do any of you guys know what drift is in terms of voice acting? Have you heard of that before? I'm going to ask the classic question. Oh, thanks, Tim. So drift is if you're playing a character that has a lot of lines. You start on line 1. By the time you get to line 500, especially if it's not your normal voice, has the voice changed? So, and this is something that happened when I went in for when I was Dietrich in Shadowverse. It was only about maybe 60, 70 lines, but couple hour session, I think. We're in there and I do my first line, and then by the time we get to the end, the director says, okay, let's play the first line and compare it to the last line. Did you drift? And if I did drift, right, because you can drift in a ton of different ways. Your accent can change a little bit, your pitch can go up or down a little bit, and you don't notice because it's sort of like a mild temperature change, right? Slowly, but then after 10 minutes, 20 minutes, it's changed by 10 degrees. And your voice has changed. So a director is listening for drift. And as an actor, you really don't have enough bandwidth to listen for drift while you're acting. So that's another important job that a director has, right? Because you could have a game where you've got 500 lines for this character and they sound like someone completely different by the time they get to the last line. And what do? If no one notices, that's terrible, because you don't see it until it's put into the game, and then players start going, hey, what happened? They sound different. Or you do notice it, and then you have to go back and either re-record the whole thing or maybe find out where you started drifting and do it again. So your director, right, is the one that's really going to help you to avoid that sort of thing. Of course, they watch for consistent pronunciation. And the director's job, an experienced director, will see mistakes in dialogue and just be able to correct it on the fly. Okay. Oh yeah, there should be "and" here. You just tell the actor, put the word "and" in there, whatever, right? So you're experienced enough to know when to do that and how to do it without messing up the meaning or changing stuff like that, right? Whereas if an actor has that, they might have to contact you and be like, what do I do here? And then 2 hours later, what do I do with this one? Stuff like that. But a director's just going to keep it going, and then you'll just get it, right? So when you give it to something like my company, if you give me everything that I need at the start, usually I'm not going to have to ask you anything. I'm just going to get all the work done and then send it to you. All right. So they're organized, they're experienced, they're able to schedule people, they know how long the sessions will take, right? How many hours it will be in the booth approximately, right? And then if you have a full studio recording with an engineer and a director and the actor there, then you work with the engineer. What I usually do, this is kind of standard for video games, right? You do 2 takes. So you tell the actor, all right, read this line and give me 2 takes. So what they do is give you just 2 slightly different takes, not wildly different or anything like that. And you pick which one you think is the best. So you go to you just, after the 2 takes happen, you turn to the engineer and just go, take 2, take 1. You just tell them which one. And the engineer will drop that track down into the master track, basically. And then that's the keeper track. So when you're done, there'll be 2 tracks in the session. One session track, right? Yes, there's a lot to this, right? One track has all the keepers, and so usually just send that to the client, or you break them down to the file naming convention they give you and send them to the client. But you save that other track because you've got a whole another track of extra takes in case there's a problem. Usually it's for a technical problem, right? If there's a pop or a click you didn't notice, or just somehow they couldn't use that one read for some reason, you've got another one saved on your hard drive, right? So that's something you can deal with in terms of a contingency. You're ready to do that. You just save everything. You save all the takes, the entire session, so you can come back to it later if you need it. Okay. Plus, the engineer and the director together sort of function as what's called a script supervisor. They're both looking at the script as you record, so they make sure that a line doesn't get missed. Or they, another thing a director do, and this happens to actors all the time. They'll read a line, but they'll change one of the words without realizing it, right? Your brain just flips a word because it thinks it should be this other word or something like that, and you don't know it, but the director's job is to watch for that and say, no, you said, went out there instead of went outward or something like that. Oh, okay. And then you have the actor do it again. Okay, so directors do a lot of stuff, and they help you have consistent voiceover, and also help you maintain your pronunciation guide. They'll correct things for you, and they're ready in case something goes wrong. A big thing that a director can do is recast. For instance, when I did Citizens of Space, right, we had that was a big game, over 5,000 lines, and there was like 50 some different characters. And we had a person come in. They were supposed to do three characters for us, because that's what we did in this game. It saves you money if you have people that can be more than one voice, because they can come in a smaller amount of time and do all like 3 voices or whatever. So I was bringing in my heavy hitters for that one, right, to do 2 or 3 different characters. You'll never know, though, and actually I was going to play you a sample of some of that at some point. But so they can deal with contingencies and take care of different problems that you might have without having to always ask you. All right, now of course you want talented, experienced actors. If you just go randomly online, who knows what you'll get? Even if they say they're amazing or whatever, you don't know, right? But they'll keep the characters consistent. In other words, they can avoid drift, which is definitely what you want to avoid. And also they can work faster because they are experienced at this, right? And if you ever wonder, probably some of you all watch anime, right? And if you do, you may have noticed, if you watch English dubs at all, which a lot of people don't, I get it, right? But you hear a lot of the same voices over and over again, okay? One of the reasons for that is because dubbing is very difficult, and the people who are good at it can go really fast, and then they're in the booth less time, and that means less money. They have more takes per hour. And that is one of the big reasons why these anime dubbing companies don't want to take a chance on somebody new, because they're not sure how you're going to do in the booth. You're going to cost them money if you're not as fast as these other people who are super fast, right? Those folks are really, really fast, right? So, but they can, not only that, they are trained to avoid drifts. They'll be better at not doing it. So that helps too. They can do several distinct voices. If you work with a pro, they won't break a non-disclosure, right? And non-disclosure is important if you're going to do a game and you haven't announced it yet, you haven't released it, you don't want to announce the cast, whatever it is. It messes up your marketing if people know about the game, especially if it's a big title, right, before it's supposed to be announced. But amateurs will just go on Twitter and be like, I'm this character in this game, and just tell everybody, right? So, yeah, right. Yeah, if you're in LA, right, that's the joke. Like, oh, you're an actor. What restaurant do you work at? But the unprofessional amateurs will go on to Twitter or Facebook and just tell everybody, I'm in this game, blah, 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 blah. And that's obviously that's not going to be good for you, right? So what I'm going to do here, I mentioned you get actors that can do several different voices. I'm going to bring up a clip. I think I added my computer audio to this OBS thing. This is my first time on Twitch, by the way, so just letting you know that. I'm going to drag over here this clip, and we'll see if it works. So this is my company website, right? And we did Citizens of Space here. And this has just a few, it's like just 30 seconds of clips here. So hopefully you'll be able to hear it. And I set that setting correctly for the audio.
Our first day and the Earth is missing. Do you know what this means?
We're out of a job?
The Dimension Police follow the rules of law and order, not cause and effect, like me. Time Cop!
Ladies and gentlemen, robots and aliens of all ages, welcome to the main event!
I love it. You're a lot uglier than I remember humans being.
Welcome to Fed Up Galactic. We'll ship your stuff by stuffing it in our ships and get it where it needs to go.
All right, there you go. So that is an example of some of the voiceover we did for this Sega game. Honestly, it was a indie game made by a friend of mine's company in Canada, and they got picked up by Sega. So that was pretty cool. But I definitely enjoyed working on that game. And yeah, Time Cop was my favorite character in the whole game, so I definitely wanted to put a clip of him in there. That was my friend in LA, Austin Lee Matthews, was playing Time Cop. But I just like, Time Cop! I can't even do it. He has to do it, right? Because he's really good at that voice. That's not a voice that I do. That's for sure. All right, so I just wanted to show you that. That's what your experienced, talented actors can do, right? They can give you some really good reads. And the thing is now, at this point, I know my actors too. I know what they can and can't do. I'm like, yes, you can do this. You can do this character, and things like that, right? So, that's what I was going to mention. I had a character come in, the actor come in. There were going to be 3 characters, but they ended up being, we had a trouble with one of their voices matching what I wanted it to be. And they didn't get to do the 3rd character, right, that we wanted. So, and then they were like, I'm going out of town for a movie shoot tomorrow, so I won't be back. So I had to recast on the fly. But I knew I had one of my heavy hitters coming in later that day, and I just said, hey, why don't you be this other character? And boom, we just recast it on the fly, because I know what my actors are capable of, because I have my own roster, right? And, I have my own roster of about 60, 70 actors that are local. I also have LA talent that I have access to as well, but now I have local talent here in North Carolina, and I know what they can do, right? I've worked with them, and they so it's really easy if I need to sub somebody in, right? I can just grab somebody. But if you don't, right? If you have something like that happen, you get something bad from somebody, you don't have a team, right? You're just going it solo, so you have to go find someone else on the internet and hope they don't mess it up. All right, so here, this is important, right? This is where you should take notes, right? You can go back and watch this, of course, and pause it here. But the important thing here is that if you're going to, when you bring your script, it's good to have it in Excel format. And I'm going to show you why in a minute, right? I have it open here for you. What even is that emoticon there? I can't tell what that is. Anyway, looks like a kidney or something. I don't know. Anyway, so you should have Excel script if you can, but other formats are acceptable, like a screenplay format or a Word document, as long as it's clear whose lines are whose, right? And again, I'll show you my example one we did from Citizens. An estimated number of lines. Now, this is the thing. probably you don't know this. Usually a line is every time a character speaks until they stop speaking and then someone else speaks, right? That's a line. So a line can be, hello, or a line can be, the aliens are coming. We saw them from far away, but we didn't believe it. And then they were here, and we were stuck with it, right? That's like 4 different sentences, but that's technically one line. So it's something that you want to keep in mind. Those are technically, so what I do, I've done a little bit of extra math. I think that other studios don't do this, but I'm kind of a computer science math person. I originally was a CS major before I got into the acting side of things. And I did a calculation, and about an average line is about 8 words, okay? So that's kind of an idea of that. But otherwise, just do it by, count your lines by those chunks, because you'll have some lines that are 1 word, and you'll have some that are like 20, but it kind of ends up averaging around 8 to 10 words per line, okay? What you want to send also, so you send your script. You send a story synopsis, so then the director can just read that to get an overview of the story, right, without having to read the whole script. Before they start, they've got a nice synopsis. Send that. Estimated number of lines. We need this. We need the number of lines so we can figure out how many hours it's going to take, right? We need it for an estimate for our budget, right? You should send us for every character a bio and a picture. Now, if they're like a throwaway character, they got 2 lines, which we call incidental character, then you don't have to give a real bio or picture. You just describe in the bare minimum what they should sound like or whatever. But for main characters, they should all have a bio and a picture if you have the art ready, right? Hopefully you've got something. You don't need it, but it's good to have, right? Okay. Animation or animatics. Now this is, if you've already got something animated and you want to voice to that. Usually it's the other way around though. When you're making stuff, original stuff, you get the voice recording first and then you animate to that, right? So why make your actors try to match something on the screen? It's much easier to, once you have the voice, then match the action to their voice, and then you're not limiting their performance to like a timing thing, okay? Send a pronunciation guide, of course, and you should send efforts. We're going to spend a little time talking about efforts because efforts is really important, and a lot of people don't remember to do those because they're not in the script. Right, scripts are all the lines you say, but if you have any kind of fighting or action game, you've got efforts for attacking, getting hit, jumping, falling, all the grunts and yells and whatever it is, right, that you might need. So it's important to have your efforts already in mind of what you want to do. Okay, so you should know what exactly you want before you contact your voiceover person, right, or your voiceover company, or however you're doing that, right? So there you go. All right, so here's a sample script. This is from the Citizens of Space game that I did, that I showed you the clip from earlier, and you can see what it normally has is this could be the file naming convention here on the left, which I believe that's what it was here for this one, right? So it's a unique identifier for each line. Now, a lot of times what I'll do as a director is I'll just drop in another column, or I could just use the row number, right? And be like, okay, line 25, right? And so the actor doesn't need to know loc, hacker, meet, whatever, right? But this, we want that if you need it, if you need to tell us this, the file naming convention in here, that would be nice. And then the player's name, and then the lines, right? Now this is the thing. What we want to do is we want to have something like this, but we want it to be an Excel table or a spreadsheet table. All right, you guys see this? I'm going to bring up my voiceover script, the actual script here. Okay, take a look at this. So it's not very hard to do in Excel, but what you want is this right here. You drop down, and here I can filter out which character I want. Let's say I want the miner. Okay, I click OK. Now I've only got the miner's lines. But if I need to, I can drop back out and see everything in context. This is the way I really like to work, right? As a director, I'm really happy if this is what I get, right? Because I can just pick the lines of whoever I'm directing at the time, the angler or whatever. Oops, I have to deselect first. There we go. the angler, whatever it is, right? The angler made a lot of fish puns. Carp A-D-M. Gotta catch them all. Jeez. This was a funny game, by the way, too. Citizen Space is a fun game. Anyway, but you can see that now I filtered back again by the character. But if I need the context of the conversation, I can drop back easily and pick all the lines again and see all the lines. That's what I like best. This is what I've usually had for most, at least pro things I've worked on. Any professional level stuff. But you don't have to send that, but it's good. It's good to have something like that. All right. Okay, so that's kind of what it looks like. Now dubbing is different because it has to match timing and things like that. But if you need dubbing for anything, feel free to ask about how that's done, or maybe hopefully I'll have some time at the end. This should take around 45-50 minutes, so we should have a few minutes at the end. All right, so efforts, just a reminder for everything here. You want to keep in mind that of everything your character does. Now it's many times that I've had game people come back to me and say, hey, we thought of some more stuff, right? So what I do is usually in my budget, I will actually add, there's a couple hours of what we call pickups for actors to redo stuff if there's something they need to redo, but also any extra stuff. A lot of times what happens is maybe the trailer's not written yet, right, for the game. So what happens is, after we do the voiceover, maybe a couple months later, then they're like, hey, can have the main character narrate the trailer? What's nice, though, is if you get the trailer ahead of time, then you just do it all beforehand. But keep in mind, any of these type of sounds, right, that you need, right? Getting killed, that's important, right? When people die, you got to have a good, whatever, right? A nice drawn out death. For your characters. It's that makes it great. Okay, so we're gonna look at more specifics on Aaron's adventure, which again, it looks like my head's cutting it off, but it's coming out on the 7th on Steam. And this was an action RPG we just finished with over about 1,500, a little over 1,500 lines, 25, a little more than 25 characters, and of course we had efforts. Tim and Tom gave us character art. It was written in screenplay style, sort of. It wasn't an Excel document, but it was done well, so I could figure out what they needed and what they wanted, right? So that was okay. I'm gonna walk you through kind of some of the process of what happened with that, right? So they had to deliver me the script, and then character art and bios. And then they actually gave me something that I normally have to do myself. Usually they'll just give me the script and then I will pick lines for them to say for the audition. Or sometimes they don't have the script and I make up lines myself. As a writer, I just write 3 or 4 lines that seem to match with the description of what the character would say for the auditions. And I don't bother the game maker about it because they don't need to worry about it. They'll get the auditions and they can listen to the sound and stuff like that. But I'll just write lines sometimes. But they already had the audition lines in the files, so I just took it and kind of narrowed it down and brought out some auditions. So here is an example of one of the character audition sheets, right? So you can see the character name, and then you should only give the actor information that they need here. Okay. Now, for instance, their information had like whether the character was a minor, supporting, or a major character, but I don't really want to tell my actors that because some of them might just not audition for the minor characters because they want to play a major character, right? That can happen, and then I'll get too many auditions for the main characters and not enough for the minor ones, and not everybody does that, but if you don't have enough time, let's say you've only got a half hour to do auditions, you'll pick the ones you want the most and then leave the other ones. So what I do is I don't tell them like how many lines the character is or how important it is. Now sometimes they can guess, right? Because it sounds pretty minor, like shop owner number 1, right? They're like, yeah, I don't think anybody's going to be playing the game as shop owner number 1, right? That's not a PC. But it's, I don't want them to. I only give the actors the information they need, like their age and their gender, of course, right? and then what the voice should sound like. In this case, we have characteristics, right? So we have an age up here, even though she lives forever, but she sounds 50-something, right? Angry, independent, sad, and impulsive. So those are 4 characteristics that describe the voice, right? And my actor, Glenna Grant, was amazing as Elena. She's terrifying as this witch. So it's pretty good. So what I did is I took the information that they gave. Oops, that's the wrong one. Where's my PDF? There it is. I took the information that was given and I made this, the audition sheets for Aaron's adventure, right? So I gave the actor some instructions, and then you could see the character, their name, right? Characteristics, and then some lines, okay? And so this goes out. So I put this together, right? So the company gives me all the bios and the descriptions and pictures or whatever. And I put all this together. Now, this was pretty easy with Aaron's because they had this already sort of put together, but it was like more information than the actors needed. So I just mostly had to trim it down and maybe do a little bit of editing. And then you get your audition lines or your copy down here, right? This is also called copy. And so then each character do that, and I would get auditions for everybody, and then compile them and then listen to them and blah blah blah, right? But that's part of my job, you know, as casting director, basically also, right? So if you hire my company, then I'm going to do this, and then I send it out to my local roster of like 60 to 70 actors, and you know, I get auditions and I listen to it. All right, let's see, let's go back to. Now, another way that these might look, right? This is one way that it looks. I want to show you an example I have here also. So here's kind of like a sort of standard description. Like if the game company or whatever didn't give me already pre-built things that are almost done, I would have to write up something like this. So, right? Yes, the silent character. Well, actually, yeah, that can happen. You know, there's a lot of main characters that don't talk, right? Because I guess the idea is you want to think of it as that character as yourself. So there's no voice for them. You just pick what you say, but they don't say anything. Anyway, let's see. So here's an example, Donatello, right? In case I was casting Donatello, which would be really cool. But let's see. So I give, you know, his gender, his approximate age. He should sound 15 to 20. You know, kind of young, man. What's going on? And Donatello's the inventor. He should sound young but smart. He's a ninja and also a turtle. That was just kind of a funny line, really. Most of all, he teaches and fights evil. He's a martial arts expert, more quiet and soft-spoken of the turtles and very loyal. Now, here's the thing. You can give a voice reference. Okay, so this is another thing, right, that goes on where you're not saying, you're not an impression, right? You're not imitating this character. But what you're doing is it's an impression. So, like, I want you to sound kind of like Tom Holland in Spider-Man Homecoming. Hey guys, what's going on? You know, kind of that sort of feel, right? Not exactly, you're not doing an impression of Tom Holland or anything. You're just trying to sound like in the same neighborhood or a similar type of voice. So that's a voice reference you can give. And you get a lot of these too. So especially for your main characters, you probably have an idea of what you want them to sound like or what actors you want them to sound similar to. And so you give a voice reference for that. Okay, and then of course, then you got your copy. All right, now for Aaron's, I asked for efforts, and boy did I get efforts. So this is, and I actually went back and you know, had to go over these with them, be like, all right, what do you want here? But there's a lot of these different efforts, and this was great though, because I knew what they wanted, right? And you know, even they had this sort of, you know, the idol, you know, this is not even, there's even more down here that I had to cut off, but like when you're like idol, where he's like or whatever, you know, kind of standing there whistling or humming, and there was a few of these that I didn't do voice for though. I talked to him about it, and I said, well, you know, see, if you hire me, I also do sword fighting, and I've shot a bow before, so I know stuff about actual how to fight. And if you shoot a bow, you don't make a sound, right? And I said, okay, you probably don't want a sound here. You just draw and you let go, right? You don't say anything. You don't make a sound. So that's not a normal thing. So I talked him out of it. I said, yeah, don't do that. I don't know. Hopefully you didn't put him in there anyway, right? Right, Tim? Right. Shouldn't be sound there. I'm just kidding. Anyway, and then they had a horse, so jumping on the horse, jumping off the horse, doing the horse sounds. I actually called up a friend of mine who owns horses, and I was like, "Hey," just start screeching. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Anyway, I called a friend who owns horses, and I was like, "What do you do? What do you say to horses, or what do you do? You got the sound, and you get the hup, So I talked to her about that and did some research, right, to find out what they should sound like. And so we went through and did all of these efforts. I like the no arrows disappointment, right? He reaches back. It's like, there's no arrow. Okay. So, but this was good, right? So this is something like what you would send to your voiceover person, right? To make sure you get all the efforts. Another thing that Tim and Tom sent me for Aaron's adventure is a pronunciation guide, which I need a pronunciation guide, especially if you've made up names and words and things like that, or you say things differently or whatever. But this was nice because it was a recorded pronunciation guide. Like I could just click and listen and play it for my actors. Normally, what I'm used to getting is like just a written, phonetic pronunciation guide. But in this case, I think it was just Tim that went and recorded all these. So that was pretty awesome to have all those, right? And you're like, oh, great. So now I know exactly how everyone should be pronounced. We have Kara in there, which is, one of my best friends is named Tara, and she will murder you if you call her Tara. So it's one of those things too, right? We need to know whether it's Kara or Kara, things like that. But yeah, so we got a pronunciation guide, we got a script, and we got character art and bios and lines. So, and I can take all that and put it together into Auditions, and then we record. I know how to pronounce things. I know what all the efforts that they need are. Those are things that you want to have ready when you start getting your voiceover. Okay, so your script, when you're doing your script, you want to remember all the things, or look through your script and pull out anything that's unusual, right? Character names that are unusual, locations that are unusual. Do you have special items? Did you make up a game item, right? So let's say you made up something, called the Eternal Claw or something, right? Which was actually an attachment to a spaceship. So you want to explain what that is when it comes up in dialogue. Like, well, I used the Eternal Claw on them. Like, okay, how should I say that? What is it? Right? It sounds kind of weird. So you write that down, maybe a little like a glossary to define those things. And if you have special names, you have a special name for magic, right? It's like Matoji or something like that. They all call magic Matoji. So you want to write that down and make sure that I hope that doesn't mean anything weird in Japanese, right? But anyway, yeah, so, you got the special, write all that, look through your script and make sure you can explain all that to your actors, your director, right? You want to agree on the format of like, okay, if you talk to them beforehand, well, hopefully, then you agree on the format of the script that you're going to deliver. Right? With me, it's mostly like, what do you got? Okay, I can work with that. But, it just depends, right? I want to know what I'm going to get before I get it. That would be nice. And if I have my preference, as you've seen, I would like to have the Excel spreadsheet because I can just pull up the lines and it's all in one script. Okay. Watch for things like duplicate lines, mislabeled, the wrong character. I find that all the time. I'll be in the middle. When you've got a game with like 5,000 lines, right? You're in the middle of it. You're like, oh, right. Yeah. Okay. That must be the other character saying that because there's no way this character would say that line. It makes no sense, right? And that's why having a director is good too because they're going to read the whole script instead of just the one character's lines. So they can catch stuff like that. All right. So once you've given your voiceover person all the stuff, what should you get back? You should get the files as WAV, right? High quality with your naming convention. Hopefully you gave them a naming convention. How do I name all these things? Right? Like, I don't care how you want me to name them. Just tell me exactly what you want so I can do it. You should also get notes on script changes. So here's an example from Aaron's adventure again, where one of the characters, the lines just didn't quite, and you find this out sometimes when you say it out loud, right? I look through Jordan, our leader, his eyes, and I'm like, that was weird, right? My actor's saying that, and I'm like, that sounds weird. So how else can we say that? I look through our leader Jordan's eyes. Oh, right, yeah. But what I do is I take the original script and I turn on basically track changes so they can see what I changed. Right? And if I did this in Excel, I could just put a note in another column and rewrite the line with the new line. Right? So it's not really difficult. So you're going to get back from me a list of all the changes I made. They're usually just going to be small things like this, right? Where the sentence didn't quite work right, or there was something missing, or a word missing, or it was the wrong word, and I'll fix that. So you'll get that back. So I don't just change things, you'll get a list of all the changes, right? And then of course you should get back some post-production. Usually what we get is what's called normalization, where we make the volume of all the people around the same, right? So when you're playing it, you don't be like, oh, that guy's too loud, that guy's too quiet, right? They're all normalized to a standard volume level. And that's what we also do for you, right? If you hire a bunch of different actors from all over the place, who knows what level they're going to be, you're going to have to do post on it probably. You're going to have to do normalization and stuff like that. All right, so that's what you should get. Hopefully you're good on what you should get here. Now, these are some bad things that you want to avoid, okay? One of the bad things is counting the lines incorrectly. Like I said, technically a line is just from when a character stops talking until or starts talking until they stop, right? And it could be a whole paragraph, it could be just one word, but I found that on average, it's about 8 words per line, right? If looking at it. Okay. Don't be rushed. You don't want to rush this thing because it'll be like a cascade, right? Just like if you're a programmer, you know that if you have one error and then you fix that, it's really wasn't that the problem. It was this other cascade of all these other errors that happened because you had that one error. And that's the same thing that can happen if you rush, right? Your script will have problems, and then it'll cause problems with recording, and then you have to re-record stuff, and then people might not be available to re-record, and then it's just a big mess. All right, so you have to really make sure that you do this with and you do all the steps without rushing them too much. Okay, and being disorganized, right? One of the things I really like, Tim, are you still there? I saw you were there earlier. I hope you're still there. But Tim and Tom, they had everything more organized than probably I'd ever seen, right? So it was really great to work on the Aaron's Adventure game because it had just so many cool. Already everything was organized. There was spreadsheets within spreadsheets and lists and everything, and so that was good. What you don't want to send is an unfinished script, right? You got to double, triple check that script and make sure that whatever you send is the final script, right? I've had too many times where we're in the middle of recording and somebody's like, oh, here's the new script. And then we have to figure out what's different and why, and did we already record some of it? It's just a huge mess. So make sure before you do start recording your voice, you have what we call script lock. It doesn't change anymore after this. All right. So budgeting, you probably want to know this. How much does this cost? Well, I'll tell you. If you go through kind of a standard studio, when you're getting a director, an engineer, and all that kind of stuff, it can be about $15 to $50 a line, okay? Or if you think about it, for a whole cinematic hour, like a movie, it could be about $10,000 per cinematic hour. That probably seems scary to an indie game developer, but that's because you're doing all these things. Like I've shown you all the stuff that we do, right? So, and you got to pay. You got to pay your engineer. You got to pay your director. You got to pay your studio for studio time. And of course, if you use a studio, that means you have sound continuity, right? All the sound will sound like it came from the same place. You'd have a mix of a bunch of different microphones and a bunch of different room tones and all that kind of thing. It's a really good quality, so you get a good thing for that. But what I do is I'm sort of in the middle here. I'm better than hiring a bunch of random people on the internet. And so it can be from about $2 a line to about $15, right? And it really just depends on so many things, like how many characters there are, what kind of voices they are. Do I have to go outside my studio to hire some people? and how much direction am I going to need to do? All, there's a bunch of different things that, there's sort of ways I can do it on the cheap. One of the ways I can do it on the cheap is direct an actor for the first hour of their lines and get them in character and get them in the direction I want to go, and then let them do the rest on their own, right? That'll save you, and if they have a home studio, it's even better, right? So, yeah, so, well, I mean, if you do your own casting and stuff like that, right, you don't get a director, right? So I'm asking you about a casting call club, right? You don't get a director necessarily, and then you're still going to have to manage and organize all this yourself, right? You might get casting done, but then what are you going to do with it, right, afterwards? So you've got to, it still can be a difficult thing to do. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but probably the worst thing is I'm going to hire all my friends to do it or whatever, right? Get all my friends to do it. But yeah. Anyway, but I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit more in a second on one of the next slides here. Anyway, this is about what you can do there. All right. So yeah, so I mentioned the sort of Craigslist of voiceover. These websites like Voice123 or Voices.com, and I'll get to you in a minute, Helm. But yeah, so you go in there and you look for people and you cast them, and the problem is you get random quality. Even if their demo sounds good, it might not sound that good for when they give it to you for various reasons, right? They might have been at a friend's studio and they're pretending they have that setup, but they really don't, right? So then it's like, oh man. So and then all the mics will be different. It won't match. They won't all be in the same studio. It might be good or might not. The audition might sound good, but I've seen some actors audition really well and then they can't deliver that performance consistently. Right? Some of the lines are just crap. They're just not able to do it. And then you have to find somebody else. Also, people can flake or disappear. You hire them and then they're just gone or whatever, right? And it sort of creates this competition on these kind of, big voice general house sites where, people will go for the low bidder. Oh, I don't have much money, so I'm going to go really low. But you're going to get what you pay for in a sense, right? So that sort of a thing, definitely. And Helm, I'll save your questions for the end here when I finish the presentation since I'm almost done. But yeah, so I don't recommend this. I recommend at least working through someone who can be a director for you, even if you don't use like a company like mine, which is sort of, designed for indies, but just someone you can grab an experienced voice actor director and then have them sort of run that for you. Would be a good thing too. Plus all the other stuff we talked about, having good writing and having good all that other stuff, right? If you're interested, using union talent off the bat costs twice as much. The only time you have to use union talent is if you want a big name actor. Most of them are union, and that makes the entire production have to be union. You can't just do some union and some non-union. That's not how it works. Okay, but most of the time you're probably not going to worry about that. Most indie games are not union, but you can ask me maybe questions about this later. Okay, so basically, if you really want to have good quality, right, you want to have an experienced studio with an experienced director because you get all of the stuff, right? You get the director's knowledge, their experience, their ability to catch mistakes, their ability to correct things, their ability to recast, their familiarity with the actors that they know instead of getting random actors that they don't know. They have their own talent pool. They know how to do the thing. They've done it before. They know what you're supposed to get, right? Your delivery that you're supposed to get. You need to know that too, right? You need to know, as I mentioned earlier, what you have to have before you go into the voice acting part, and then what you should get from whoever delivers it to you. Know what your budget is, and then avoid bad things like not having your script ready and trying to record with an unfinished one, things like that, okay? All right, so here at the end, what I'm going to do before I do questions is I'm going to give you an offer. I'm going to give 3 free 30-minute consultations to the first 3 people who go to my website here and fill out the contact form. Just say, I want my free consultation, and I'll just talk with you about your game and what you need. And I'm not going to necessarily recommend, my studio. I'm going to just talk to you about what solutions you could do and how you could do it. So if you want to go there, to the website and go to the contact form. It's at the bottom of the main page. There's also a link in the menu at the top for contact. So whatever you want to do. So the first 3 people who go there and fill that out, I will give you a 30-minute consultation on your game, whatever you're doing, okay, for voiceover. All right, so now I want to go to the Q&A, and I've got a couple in here. Let's see, what about facial capturing and mocap? Well, right now, I am not set up to do that yet, but if I had a client who wanted it, then I would set it up. Part of the reason is because of COVID. We haven't, I moved my business to North Carolina about a year ago or so, and I have a studio that I'm partnered with, but I haven't gone in there and set them up yet for dubbing, which is another thing we want to be able to do, right? So I have to set up extra monitors and stuff like that in the booth, and haven't set up any mocap equipment. But we can do that in there, once my partner, basically Dan, is comfortable with people coming over. We're getting close to that, right? We just did, everything we've done in the last year has been from home studios, right? Except I had a few people come to my home studio, but there's only me and the other person here, right? Yeah, so mocap, that's going to be another thing. There'll be, a little bit, maybe like another 20% cost for doing the mocap. I would say that would be a good estimate of doing that. Let's see. Do actors start using these technologies more than before, or do they rely on developers doing that? Really, in terms of some voice actors are just voice talent, and they don't really know how to do much of any technological stuff, which puts them in a handicap for sure. If they're really good, at least, then they'll still get work. But otherwise, anyone has an advantage who knows how to do stuff. Like a lot of work now requires the voice actor to do their own editing and noise reduction and normalization and stuff, and send that along too. So it's an interesting thing. Like we have to buy, like for Blade and Soul, my character in Blade and Soul, I've been recording from my home studio, but I have to invest in Source Connect, which is a high quality audio connection direct to the studio. So basically the LA studio that does the recording for the game had a direct connection to the output of my microphone through this technology called Source Connect. So and you got to pay for that. That's, so there's kind of there's a barrier too. I set up a home studio. It probably is I did it. I know how to build things, so I did it pretty cheap. It was probably like $1,200, including the microphone and everything. But most people are looking at $3,000 to have a good home studio, so that's kind of a barrier too. Some people will buy a Yeti snowball and go in the closet, but it's not a professional level condenser XLR mic, and it's not a perfectly soundproof room. You can notice the difference between people who have a true condenser and people who have the USB mic. So there you go. Any other questions here? Yeah, sure. Hopefully that addressed those for you. So there's a big information dump there, right? Anything you want to ask about voice acting? Now you've got a minute to do it. All right, good. Well, it turns out that that's about exactly an hour anyway. So I'm glad that those of you who are interested were able to come and hear about that. If you just dropped in, you can go back, of course, and watch the recording of my presentation on how to do voiceover for video games and how to do it well, and the advantages of having a director and experienced people and all that kind of good stuff, including the things you need to have before you start getting into recording and that whole casting process and all that good stuff. Okay, good. Yeah. Right? Yeah, sure. And again, if you want that consultation, again, the first 3 people who go to my website and fill out the contact form, I will give you a free 30-minute consultation, and we'll talk about your game and what we can do, and how you can do good voiceover for it. All right. Thanks, everyone, and I will see you around. I'm going to actually try to get into the con this weekend. I haven't been able to download the app yet because I've been working, but I'm going to try to jump in there. So I hope I'll see you around soon.